I don't know if you guys have seen this story out of New York where they're housing migrants in this luxury hotel and they're supposed to move them to Brooklyn. But the migrants are like, but the shelter in Brooklyn is like hard beds and no luxuries. We want to be in the luxury hotel. And so now left-wing activists are demanding they let those migrants back in that luxury hotel. You know, I saw this and I have a simple answer to all of you. I'll tell you exactly what I would do. If the government came to me and said, you will do this thing, I would say no. And if they said, do it or else, I would say, I will shut my business down before I agree to this and you run it. I suppose the problem there is the government would probably be like, oh boy, okay, we'll seize your property without paying you. Because, you know, that's what the government likes to do. But my attitude is this. You come to my business and make demands of me, I'll just shut it down. There was a story a while ago about this encrypted email service. I forgot what it was called. But it was pertaining to the Edward Snowden story. And I guess the government issued a national security letter. And they said, you need to turn over, you know, in encryption keys or something like that. And the owner was like, I ain't doing it. And they're like, you can't tell anybody. He's like, then I'm shutting my business down because you will not coerce me. And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. If you come to me and said, we want you to report this thing or talk about this thing, I'd be like, no. Well, you better do it. Bro, I will go live down by the river before I start doing any of this stuff. Now, I guess the problem is they will just seize the hotel if the hotel doesn't agree to it. Here's the story. They say, a self-appointed spokesman for the migrants assembled outside of a hotel in Manhattan as they protest the efforts being made to move them to a converted ferry terminal is a longtime agitator with a history of left-wing activism going back to the Occupy Wall Street movement. Really. On Tuesday, interviews and speeches from Sergio Tupac Uzurin, 37, were broadcast on TV and on social media from outside the Watson Hotel. The male migrants who had been living at the hotel are being moved to Brooklyn in order to make room for women and children at the Watson, according to city officials. You kidding me? It's not even like they're saying we want rich people to stay here. They're saying we're going to give the room to women and children because they need it more. And these guys are like, but I want luxury. Talk about chivalry being dead, man. Uzurin made demands that included allowing the migrants to remain at the hotel or to be given $1 million apartments for free. Amazing. His Instagram page is littered with his coverage of the protests for BLM and various other left-wing causes. His activism dates back to 2012 when he was pictured at an Occupy Wall Street protest. I don't know if he seems kind of familiar. I don't know if I remember seeing him at Occupy. Occupy was 2011, by the way. Uzurin, a graduate of the public, but notoriously difficult to get into Stuyvesant High School in Manhattan, told ABC New York in an interview, the immediate resolution is that the Hotel Watson needs to accept these men back and put them back into their rooms. Well, then where do the women and children go? Where do you put the women and children? I got this photo. Uzurin pictured in an Occupy Wall Street protest in 2012. His activism goes back over 10 years. Let me tell you about Occupy Wall Street, my friends, so you can understand these people better. AstroTurf. That's what it is. AstroTurf. Occupy Wall Street started semi-organically. I say semi because there's always some kind of nonprofit trying to squeeze its way in and get influence out of people. But a lot of people were angry, decided to go down to Wall Street, protest. It was a meme. They couldn't get into Wall Street. It was barricaded off. So they settled on Zuccotti Park. A month before Occupy Wall Street, a group of left-wing activists were holding meetings about how they were going to do the protest. So it had been planned long in advance. This, I think, was always an affront to the more moderate individuals who showed up who did not know that leftists had showed up to try and take control of this meme before it even started. But then, within a few months, more and more powerful interests started to take over. You started to see more manufactured signs being handed out and things like this. A real protest doesn't have many signs. AstroTurf protests, for some reason, everyone's got the same signs. Oh, how weird is that? Because activists and organizations will spend money and time to make them and then hand them out. And then these protesters don't even know exactly what they're saying. I remember I was at a protest in New York, and revolutionary communists, it's called RevCom, they wear jack boots and they march and go left, right, left, no joke, handed out a bunch of signs that said something about ending police racism, RevCom. And so I asked them when I was filming, and I'm interviewing, and this was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I'm maybe even longer, actually, maybe 7. But I'm interviewing people, asking what's going on. And I saw one woman holding the sign, and I said, is it okay if I ask you some questions? And she's like, sure. And I was like, what do you think about what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, here's what I think. Yada. And I said, are you associated with RevCom, with Revolutionary Communists? And she goes, what? No, I'm not a communist. Who are you working for? Are you Fox News? And I went, no, ma'am, your sign says RevCom on it. And she's like, I am not a communist. You're fake news. Well, I don't think she said fake news, but she was like, this is Fox News. What do you, now you're trying to accuse me of being communist. And I was like, what is going on, lady? You're holding up a sign that says RevCom on it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It said, no, that's not true. It said something like stop fascism. And I said, stop. I was like, are you associated with RevCom? Stop fascism is a part, it was something like that. I was like, it's a part of the Revolutionary Communist Party. And then she went off. It's a cult. These people are in a cult. I don't know how else to say it. They're in a cult. They want to be in a cult. They don't want to research. They don't want to read. They're just mad and they want to be mad. And how do you convince them? I'm watching 1883. Have you guys seen it? Spoiler alert. I know it's a couple years old, but I'm watching. It's like the last episode, I think. And it's if you're not familiar, it's the Oregon Trail, basically. And so, good game, by the way. The Oregon Trail back in the 80s, 90s. And so they come across a Lakota camp that's been destroyed, burned. The women and children are murdered. One woman was, let's just call it, abused, left for dead. And they're like, our tracks lead right to this camp. They're going to think we did it. So they decide to go off and find who did it and get justice. When the wagon and everybody leaves, the Lakota come back, see the dead, and then run after. They follow the trail. They come across these wagons and immediately just assume these people killed their family and start massacring the pioneers. And then finally, in the end, the main character yells something in Comanche, and they're like, how do you know that? And she says her husband's Comanche. And then they're like, she's like, we didn't kill your family. My dad's tracking down their killers. And then they stop. Here's why I bring it up. For one, I just literally watched it. But when you are being faced with a violent, angry mob of people running full speed at you, convinced you killed their family, what do you do? What do you do? In the show, they circle the wagons and get their guns ready. And I'm like, there's nothing but conflict coming. When you have these people who care for nothing when it comes to the truth, they're angry and it's your fault. What do you do? Do you say, stop, please, let's not fight. This is not no, because they're running at you with guns drawn, figuratively. They're coming at you screaming that you're a fascist and you can't do anything because they're blinded with rage. And you know what? Honestly, that happens a lot in that show. I don't know if that's how things were back then, but it's pretty scary that we had a constitution that said you're innocent until proven guilty, yet they still just went out and killed people. I guess that was the lawlessness of the West. You're in the middle of nowhere. That's just what happens. Now, I can't imagine the violence in that show is actually depicting legitimate violence because, you can't just go around murdering tons of people in saloons. It happens in the show. There's got to be some process. Otherwise, people are going to get mad. But just thinking about that scene, having watched it just the other day, I'm like, how would you confront an angry mob that won't talk to you? They're intent on making war with you. I don't know, man. As soon as you circle the wagons and draw your guns, you are showing them you are the threat. So what do? Do you drop all your weapons and just get down and put your hands up and say, it wasn't us, we didn't do it? Are they going to believe you? No idea. I kind of feel like in that show, maybe that was the better option because you're seriously outgunned and outmanned. You got a whole bunch of, Lakota on horseback with pistols and bows and everything. It's like your best bet might be to actually just surrender outright and say, we didn't do it. But back into the real context of what's happening in the United States, I think when you bring it to reality, it's nice to believe that you could say, please stop, listen, and they will, but they won't. Because I've experienced this. And in fact, I think what's really fanciful is that when the main character yells in Comanche and then they're like, how do you know that? And then they say, we're going to stop now and we're not going to kill you or whatever. It's like, no way. They'd be like, you lie. And they'd kill you. They don't care. People don't act this way. You get far left extremists who come out and they're going to be like, you're a fascist. No matter what you say, they won't care. Hey, as exemplified by the video I did about Hassan Piker earlier today. When I can make a video, I'm like, I agree with him. Why are we spending money on gender studies programs all over the world? Literally referring to Pakistan, where we spent $10 million and $100 billion in Ukraine when we can't fix our own pipes, when we can't provide healthcare to our own people. And his response was to agree with me a little bit, but then insult and deride and laugh at me. And then all of his fans are doing the same thing. It's a violent mob that's unwilling to listen to the truth, even when you agree with them. It's a zombie horde. That's what scares me, and I don't see a solution. I really don't. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.